What's up, y'all? I am here at Geomancer headquarters, aka my house, and today I just wanted to make a kind of a rambly video about this skylight, or it used to be a skylight. When I moved into the house it was a skylight, but you can see that I've boarded it up. It's now just been integrated into the roof on the outside. So why did I do that? I think there's two things I want to talk about. First is just a comment about sort of my personal psychology and the approach that I take to design decisions like this. And then the other point is something I think a little more about climate adaptation and kind of decomplicating our lives a little bit for the future and how that fits into the permaculture perspective. So first about the personal piece. I don't know if you're familiar with skylights, but skylights are modern skylights, at least conventional skylights in homes like this. This house was built in the 80s. The skylight was retrofitted by another owner since then, and it was very poorly done. But even when skylights are done correctly, they are always either about to leak or currently leaking. So to me, that is a failure point. That is, as nice as it was to have that sunlight coming in here, I was always going to have to worry about the skylight. It was always eventually going to start leaking, and in fact it did. And so I could have just gotten up there and redone the caulk job, maybe added some more flashing, something like that. In point of fact, the skylight did turn out to be very poorly manufactured, so I don't think I was going to save it one way or the other. But instead of trying to fix it, I just tore it out, patched the hole in the roof, and said, you know, that's good enough. I don't have to worry about it anymore. And that is definitely a personal approach to this issue. Like, I don't know if it's ADHD or whatever, but rather than have this thing that's providing some nice light but is potentially going to cause me stress in the future or cause me to always have to worry about it into the future, I just get rid of the problem altogether, right? I simplify, decomplicate what's going on here as far as the maintenance of this house, so I can move on to other things and think about other things. And I definitely apply that kind of philosophy, that approach, as kind of cold and calculating as it can be, to things like perennial agricultural systems. Why am I going to fuss with annual crops that I have to cultivate year after year if I can develop a milpa or a diverse interplanting of perennial crops that are going to collaborate or cooperate well with each other and allow me to kind of more passively forage from that system and tend it in a less intensive manner, right? I look at my house, the dwelling, in the same way. We can apply those permaculture principles of looking at where's our energy flow, what kind of inefficiencies are in the system, and where can we tighten it up. And so speaking of tightening it up, I also want to talk about this from a climate adaptation and a preparedness, disaster prepping kind of perspective. I know a lot of people kind of find affinity with those topics, and especially with climate change and everything that's going on, it's just becoming more and more relevant for us to be thinking about these things. So this side of the house is actually where the prevailing wind comes from, most of the big storms we get. And so that, even if the skylight had been properly put in, if it was the highest quality skylight on the market, it still would have been a failure point, because that's just where a lot of the stress, the environmental stress, is going to be on the house. So it's a good design decision to say, let's not put the weak point on that side of the house, right? That makes sense. So I'll probably try to compensate for the loss of light here by putting a window in the gable end of the house or something like that. That's something for future me. I also got to figure out how I'm going to patch this up, if I'm going to patch this up, if I even care that much, right? Because the important thing was, let's get the exterior of the structure secure. Now, this idea of simplification and degrowth is so important in permaculture, because very often what's being presented as sustainability, as green adaptation, are really just systems that are perpetuating the underlying capitalist, extractive, infinite growth mentality. So when we can kind of simplify, when we can consume less, when we can collapse the industrial supply chains that are globally unsustainable, we can make decisions that are ultimately going to be better for the long term. A really good example of this in our region is there was an eco-village that was built, and they had, I guess it was a passive solar system or something like that, but they had some sort of remotely controlled shutters on these buildings that would open and close to let in sunlight and keep the house warm at night and so forth. And the electrical controls on these shutters eventually failed. This smart house system eventually failed. And when they went to try and fix it, they realized that the company that had manufactured the controllers for that system was in Belgium or something, and they had gone out of business. So this high dollar system on this big fancy eco-village just sits completely non-functional because it had too much complexity designed into it from the outset. So this is a direct kind of counterbalance to that, where we say we're going to decomplexify, right? We're going to simplify, degrow, and make fewer points of failure in our system, whether that's our house or that's our agricultural system, our food system, or any other kind of piece of our society. We should be looking for these inefficiencies and trying to get rid of them as much as possible. And I think this is so important because when we do simplify systems that are prone to collapse, like this Skylight, even if we're doing it in response to a coercive force like the intensifying storms brought on by climate change, even then, it's still going to free up mental bandwidth. It's going to free up energy. It's going to free up our ability to maintain and care for more important parts of our social fabric and even our own individual lives, right? Taking it back to my psychological well-being, I sleep better at night having one less thing to worry about under my roof, right? So I can't stress that enough, that this is part of kind of adapting to the realities of the 21st century. It's also kind of that prepping mentality or whatever. I have much more resilience in this structure to something like a disaster level natural storm. And I am going to be reaping the benefits of it in terms of my long-term ability to put energy and resources into more forward-thinking parts of retrofitting this structure or other houses in this neighborhood in the future.